What is going on, everybody? Welcome back in another segment of the Fantasy Coaches Network here. I am Coach Steve. I'm back with my 32-team fantasy preview. So if you've been watching, I guess at some point, end of last week, I started doing a 32-man preview, basically going through each team, looking at their ADPs, and kind of just talking about them for about 10 to 15 minutes overall here. Both times I've gone to about 15 minutes. So if you're with me for the 15 minutes, I do appreciate it. But again, I'm just quickly talking about each team's fantasy preview as we go through the motions here. So we'll get started here. And this week, guys, we're doing the New England Patriots. A lot of things happened with the New England Patriots this time around. They traded for Devontae Parker. They signed Ty Montgomery, again, not really relevant. They drafted Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris, where they already loaded RB core. And they also brought back I can't think of his name. James White. He's right there on the screen. And then, of course, the recent news, they traded away former first-round pick N'Keal Harry. So they made some moves to, I guess you could say, improve the offense of what it was last year. And it comes down to the main guy at the helm here, Mac Jones. Now, Mac Jones currently sitting at ADP 161, round 13 or so. That's on Fantasy Pros. And, again, it's not a terrible spot for him. And people, again, I'm a Dolphins fan, so I have bias. I usually try to stay away from the biased opinions here. But Mac Jones did actually better than most people, I think, expected out of him, especially out of me. I did not expect him to do as decent as he had done in his rookie season with very minimal, to be honest, pass-catching weapons there. But he managed to be, about top 15 in most quarterback stat categories. Again, a lot of quarterbacks dealt with injury, so he might have been pushed up because of that reason there. But in the same sense, he finished strong with 4 QB1 performances over the last 7 games, but somehow managed to finish QB 16. I think there was a lot of variance to his game where he played some decent outings, but then there were some games where you all know that one Buffalo game when he threw the ball 3 times. So it really, I think at the end of the day with Mac Jones, it comes down to how much does the team want to put on Mac Jones' plate. And I don't know if they're going to give him the keys to the wagon and let him just ride around crazy and have a good time. So with Mac Jones, I think I wouldn't want him in a 1 QB league. I think I talked about most of this division not really wanting much of them as a 1 quarterback outside of Josh Allen. We'll get to tomorrow. But in a 2 QB league, I think he might present a safe floor overall. I mean, he did get an upgrade in Devontae Parker on his team. The tight ends, hopefully a guy like Jonas Smith can kind of bounce back after a bad year and bring back what they paid him to be. And a guy like James White could be a nice security blanket for the team there because he was used so heavily often. I'll get to him as well. So they added enough, some pieces that maybe there's some improvement there, but I don't know if it's, year 2, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen breakout kind of season out of him. But in a Superflex league, he's definitely a decent QB2. And 1 QB leagues don't really want anything to do with him. He might be a streamable option at weeks. But again, nothing great to say about Mac Jones. He's just a decent quarterback. Nothing great, nothing bad. So the running back situation is a little more tricky here. Obviously, we have known this backfield to be somewhat of a very, very crowded, talented core. And all starts with Damian Harris here, who went nuts last year, obviously. He was really good. And he had 15 rushing touchdowns last year. But the one thing about the Patriots backfield, and I went back and looked about the last 15 years, they've only, since 2007, they haven't had a running back lead the team in rushing just more than just 2 times. So after 2 times in a row, after that, it always seemed to be something new. And so that kind of does scare me because there are other potentials on this team that I'll get to in a few seconds that could end up being the leading rusher. So again, for one, the targets scare me. The way he's going in round 6, I really want nothing to do with him in round 6. I know this is a run-first team. They might try to run the ball consistently, but there's just nothing with this. There's no upside in the passing game. And Ramondre Stevenson and James White are there. They're going to take basically all that work away, which kind of will put Damian Harris as a 2-down role. And who knows if they want to use him in a way where it's just the goal line or short yards or just first downs, whatever. I mean, it limits to him a lot, especially if he gets a goal line carries, it won't be that bad. But again, he's also in a contract year, so they're going to push him. They're going to push him to the edge and try to use him as much as they possibly can. That's potentially there. But in round 6, you're hoping for more upside to, I think, still have that potential to maybe be a high-end RB2. I know he finished basically close to there, but I just don't see 15 touchdowns again coming from him. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson didn't play the first half of the season here, and obviously James White was lost for half the year. And then you go and draft 2 running backs as well. You never know what's going to happen here. his price is way too early. I think round 8 would be a more safer bet, but he might be gone by then. I would avoid Damian Harris if I can. Now, Ramondre Stevenson is definitely interesting because I think coming out of college, he was a really fun running back to watch at Oklahoma, and he did a lot of decent things, especially at the end of the season. He had 3 games over 15 carries in just the one half of the season here, and he was honestly just as good as Harris. And he actually at times showed more receiving threat than Damian Harris has shown us in his 3 years of being there now. So Ramondre Stevenson, I think, has the best shot to dethrone him or actually see it more of a 50-50 split instead of what we saw was last year. And if he gets that receiving work, even better to him. Again, he's a solid player, but I don't know if round 8 would be, again, still doing, or round 9 would do it for me. I think that's the ceiling I would want to take him. Round 10, 11, I prefer better because we just don't know what's going to happen with this core here. Again, there's just so many weapons now that can do different things that Ramondre Stevenson's the one can do both, which is really good to know. But again, we just don't know what's going to happen. James White, Pierre Strong. James White in PPR leagues and deeper leagues might have some value. I mean, he had 13 targets in the first 2 games of the season, and then after game 3, during game 3, I think he got hurt and obviously went out for the year at that. So he could be a sneaky PPR deeper league man, 14, 16 man pickup for the running back position there. He's obviously going outside the top 16 rounds in a normal 12-man league, but Mac Jones, I don't believe has the greatest deep ball personally to me when I was watching him on film coming out. And the short yardage dump offs could be somewhere where James White kind of gets back into things. People, are kind of just throwing him to the dust like, oh, well, that was so long ago. It seems like it was only like 2-3 years ago that he really not broke out, but had that high target share. So he could be a sneaky deep play that people aren't talking about at all. Ramondre Stevenson has more of that sleeper value. Pierre Strong probably won't get used. Kevin Harris probably won't get used, kind of like Damian Harris did, kind of rushed freshman year. And then next year when maybe Harris is gone and whatever they plan to do with James White, they'll step in to take the next mantle at the RB position there. But Damian Harris, bust that round 6. Definitely rather have him later. Stevenson has that sleeper appeal. And then James White has that deep value that I do like in his game. So, all right, over to the wide receivers now, guys. It's a lot of fun here with the wide receivers because we still don't want any of these guys. Devontae Parker comes in at top, which is wild. But it is what it is. Round 13, I guess you could take a shot on him, but I also just don't want anything to do with Devontae Parker. I've been a Dolphins fan for my entire life, and I've seen Devontae Parker play over the years. And yeah, he had that one really great season, but he's been injured every single year since then. And that's the big thing with Devontae Parker is that he just hasn't been able to play a full season. Yeah, he averaged about 10 fantasy points per game last year when he was on the field, which is definitely interesting. But is he going to not get hurt? He's playing in colder weather. Does that affect him even more? The injury just turns me off on him. I'd rather just avoid him if possible. Yeah, he might have a few decent outings as the deep ball threat downfield, but I'm just not interested. Jacoby Myers is definitely a lot more interesting because I feel like Jacoby Myers is super underrated. He's like a very poor man's DJ Moore, to be honest. Obviously, the touchdown situation kind of falls in there, but he's a poor man because he's not putting up the 1,100 yards that DJ Moore is putting up, but he's fallen in that category where he just can't score. Well, he finally scored after 3 years in the NFL, 2 touchdowns this season, and we're hoping for more, obviously, for his future. But in round 15, I think it's just a no-brainer if you're looking for a last spot, wide receiver in your team there. He's someone who got 27 targets last year from the slot role a lot. I think his role is pretty safe in this offense here. I don't expect him to, not be a part of this offense here. I mean, he did have, 6 targets in 13 of the 17 games he played in. I think there's room for improvement so that maybe 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns does make sense for a wide receiver getting in round 15. He's definitely a late round target that I'm looking to attach myself to because of Mac Jones' inability to throw the ball deep downfield. Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, definitely no Nelson Aguilar. He's just there for show. But now Kendrick Bourne obviously had himself a nice breakout season last year, 800 yards, 6 touchdowns. I don't know if he's going to repeat those productions numbers once again. I mean, he's been in the league for such a long time now, and he finally has a decent season. And then you bring Devontae Parker in, hopefully the other tight ends and everyone gets more involved once again. I just don't think Bourne is more of a just best ball play at best. And maybe you'll have a couple games where he just goes off for a long touchdown. But again, there's no reason to go after a guy like Kendrick Bourne for sure. So, all right. So we are on to the tight ends now. And the tight ends are definitely interesting because we definitely didn't expect Jonnu Smith to get outproduced by Hunter Henry. I said that was a little closer all season last year, but a lot of people had Jonas Smith to the roof. I know he got the big contract. He's going to be the number one possible option on the team. It was definitely a big thing. But Hunter Henry ended up being the best option basically on this team here. I mean, but it was really touchdown dependent with Hunter Henry. So I'm not saying that Hunter Henry really exceeded expectations. He just caught a lot of touchdowns. He only had 3 games over 50 yards last year. But he had 9 touchdowns, which was great. He played 14th most in the snap slots, which for a tight end playing in the slot, pretty decent big deal there. So he obviously sees he's being used out wide there, but he's just not being used downfield as much. He's getting the short dinky passes there, and then he's obviously being very much used in the red zone, which is obviously great to hear for a tight end because it's very hard to find a good tight end. Again, in that range, he's definitely not a bad tight end to grab if you take that late tight end approach around 13. I think there's a couple other players in that range that might show more upsides. But if you want to take a Albert O and a Hunter Henry, I think that's a nice combination of a big upside player or Irv Smith Jr. upside play, and then have Hunter Henry be that hopefully safe option for you. But Jonas Smith, I just don't know what to do with him. Honestly, you're going to be able to get him probably for nothing overall in drafts. You're not going to probably even draft him. He's probably going undrafted in a lot of leagues. I think in my Scott Fishbowl, he was almost in around 17, 18, still not there, and I almost grabbed him, but he could end up being a really big wild card this season. And that's the one thing with Jonas Smith is that he has a athleticism that is interesting. And if they use him in the right way, maybe that's possible. But I just don't know what you're going to get out of him early on. He's definitely someone that wait and see, and he's going to be a waiver wire pickup if something goes off with him. I wouldn't recommend being that last pick thing because I just don't know if there's better players, more upside I think in their game than a guy like Jonas Smith right now in his career. He's already I think 27 at this point. He's not a young sprout anymore. So at this point, Jonas Smith is definitely off radars until further notice. But everyone on this offense is definitely questionable just because of the coaching. We had Josh McDaniels left to go to the Raiders. Now we don't know who's really being the new offensive coordinator. Matt Patricia, Coach Judge. I mean, it's wild. And maybe Bill Belichick ends up doing it. I don't know. Maybe he can be a mastermind on the offense. Who knows? But yeah, it's not really many people I wanted this range, but I think Ramondre Stevenson is a sleeper. Jacoby Myers, late in drafts, you're getting him, are your probably 2 biggest options if you're going to target this offense. So, but that's going to wrap things up today, guys. I do appreciate you all listening in. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the segment here. I will be back tomorrow night, probably doing the Buffalo Bills next. If you want to go back and watch the Miami Dolphins and New York Jets, they're already up on our website, the Fantasy Coaches on YouTube. And if you ever want to check our website out, easy way to find a lot of different things as well, www.thefantasycoaches.com. And until next time, guys, hopefully this fun information has been good for you guys. Thanks for listening, and have a good one.